there won't be many teams that you pick over the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I know that sounds redundant, but this year especially, it feels like they're on a mission to avenge their loss from the national championship game against Georgia last year. And you look at the talent they have returning, they have a lot of NFL talent, guys that will go in the first round, and those guys are motivated. They also were very successful in the transfer portal. Nick Saban basically just gets whatever he wants. And it's really tough to put a list like this together because of the amount of talent they have returning, the amount of talent they recruit, the amount of talent they get in the transfer portal. You can say the word talent in Alabama synonymously, and you really don't have an argument. Nick Saban has been dominating college football for years and years and years, and 2022 isn't going to be any different when you look at the guys they have returning. Now, you can make some debate about who should be first, but honestly, it has to be Will Anderson. You look at what he did, just watching the film, you notice that he's the best player on the field. Doesn't matter who he's facing, who he's going against, he is the best player in the field. And then when you look at his production, it makes it even more insane. 101 tackles, 31 tackles for loss, 17 and a half sacks. He is the best player in college football. It's not even really a conversation in my mind. You look at what he does on the edge, how he commands extra attention, and it really doesn't even matter at times. Teams still struggle to block him. But the other thing is that Alabama is so talented that you can't really just commit all those guys to blocking Anderson because someone else will step up. And when we talk about some of the names on this list, it's easy to see why teams can't send more than one or two guys to block him. And that's what makes him the best player in the entire country. His production is off the charts. And while people are, clamoring for him to be a Heisman candidate, I think that that's still a little bit out of reach. But if he improves upon the numbers that he had last year, I don't see how you can really keep him away from that conversation. Speaking of the Heisman, Bryce Young returns after winning the Heisman Trophy last year. Nearly completed 67% of his passes, threw for over 4,800 yards, 47 touchdowns, and he gets a chance to do what only one person has done before: win the Heisman Trophy two times in a row here. And I think that he is going to. It's going to be hard. It's always been hard to win the Heisman Trophy two times in a row, especially. You look at what Johnny Manziel had to do. You look at what Jameis Winston had to do. It's not easy because you already have the kind of bias that everybody sees you with. You see, they're always looking for you to do something wrong, to give someone else. We like change as a society, and we like seeing what, we don't like seeing the same people win over and over again, which is why, some people do like that. Some people do like watching Alabama win year after year after year. But I think that people are trying to find reasons for you to fail or for reasons for you to slip up. And like I mentioned, and Will Anderson is on your team too. So you have to fend off that competition as well. But Bryce Young is super talented. I really like what he does as a passer. He's really great off platform. He throws the ball from multiple different angles, and he's incredibly accurate with the football in all those angles. So it's going to be fun to see what he can do. Now, he does have to find some new pass catchers. He loses over 75% of his pass catching from last year. So there's going to be new players that need to step up, but one of them that comes back, we'll talk about one that they added in the transfer portal. There's a ton of talent for him to utilize, so I'm not really worried about that. A player he can utilize out of the backfield is going to be Georgia Tech transfer Jahmyr Gibbs, arguably the best running back in college football. You look at his production: 746 yards, 5.2 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns on the ground, 35 catches, 465 yards, and 2 touchdowns as a pass catcher. Those numbers aren't anything crazy. Now, keep in mind, he played for Georgia Tech. And no offense to Georgia Tech, but you look at what they didn't have anything else. There was nobody on the level of Jahmyr Gibbs. And at times, Jahmyr Gibbs was doing all the work by himself. So the fact that he had over 1,000 total yards is incredible, and that should terrify anybody that sees him in Alabama's offense, because now he has a supporting cast that is going to open things up for him. He has an offensive line that should be extremely talented. They just have to figure out some chemistry and whatnot, and that's going to give him more room to run. And the system that they're utilizing, if they just line him up in the slot, get him out as a pass catcher, this is going to be a terrifying offense with Bryce Young also returning. Eli Ricks was another great addition in the transfer portal coming from LSU. I think a lot of people are excited to see what he can do if he can bounce back to his 2020 form where he had 4 interceptions. He's an extremely long, rangy cornerback that can be a cornerback number one in next year's draft. And I think that his addition to this defense can only make them better. A defense that is going to be pretty terrifying to watch when you look at this list. Henry Choito was kind of overshadowed by Christian Harris, by Will Anderson, but he still had 111 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks. I think that he gets overlooked because he's not super flashy all the time. He's a player that's just going to get the job done, and he is going to make plays that your defense needs him to make. And sometimes that's boring. And I mean, if it's boring, then Nick Saban's okay with that. They like to have that on their team. And a linebacker like Toto is going to be that depth that you need when guys are focusing on Will Anderson, trying to take him out of the play. And you look at some of the other players they have returning, a guy like Henry Choito is that leader, that veteran that you need returning that's going to make the player clean things up when there might be an opening here or there. A lot of people are excited about Jermaine Burton, what he can do in this offense. I think that there's a little hesitation because we're not sure what he actually can do. You look at what he did at Georgia, he only had 26 catches, which is crazy. It just seems like a guy who comes in with so much height would have had more hype and more excitement, and it just didn't feel that way. But you look at his numbers, extremely explosive. 19.1 yards per catch is a nightmare to cover usually. And it's going to be fun to see how he gels with Bryce Young and what they're capable of doing in terms of being explosive. There's a ton of wide receiver talent, but someone needs to step up. Like I said, John Mechie is gone. Jameson Williams is gone. Slade Bolden is gone. Someone has to step up, and it's going to come down to, can Jermaine Burton be what everybody expects him to be, and what does that mean for this offense? Jordan Battle surprised probably most people by returning to Tuscaloosa. I don't know if it was just unfinished business or what, but they're not going to complain having an all SEC type talent return at safety. And this defense, like I said, this defense just wasn't what we've expected from Alabama in the past. And I think that changes all this year. You look at the talent they have back, and holy cow, are they going to be fun. I think they can be very disruptive. They might even be more of a defensive team than an offensive team. But still, you look at the talent they have on both sides of the ball, and it's tough to say either way. But Jordan Battle is a huge return for this defense, for the Crimson Tide. And you look at what he does for this defense, a little bit of everything, that Swiss Army knife for this defense, and it'll be fun to see him back in action. Dallas Turner was maybe the surprise late in the season last year. And maybe not a surprise to Alabama fans, but you look at the rest of the country, I don't think a lot of people knew who Dallas Turner was when the season began. People definitely know his name now. And we already talked about Will Anderson and Henry Toto. Now you throw in Dallas Turner, who can really step up and potentially replace Christian Harris in terms of production. You look at his year last year, 10 tackles for loss and 8.5 sacks. That's huge for a guy who was really sparingly used. And now he gets a chance to start, be more of an impact player. And I really like his potential on this defense. I think he's a good fit. He's disruptive. And like I said, when teams are focusing on Will Anderson, that opens things up for players like Turner, for other players on this defense. And a guy like Dallas Turner can really grow. And while he might take some of the production away from his teammates, they don't really care as long as they're winning, because really they only have one goal this year, and that's to win the national championship. Kool-Aid McKinstry has arguably the best name in college football, and honestly, it's good enough to put him on this list. And on top of that, he is an extremely talented player, and I think got his feet wet enough where he understands what it takes to compete in the SEC. And I'm really excited to see what he does in 2022, because teams are probably going to avoid Eli Ricks if he is back to what everybody expects him to be. If he lives up to expectations, Kool-Aid is going to see a lot more action. You're going to see a lot of teams test him to see if he's actually ready. But with last year's experience, I think that he saw the speed. He got his wake-up call. And I think that now that he's learned, he knows exactly how to fight back. He knows how to counter that. and it'll be fun to see what he's capable of doing now with that year of experience under his belt. The last spot is so difficult to put because it's hard to limit Alabama to just 10 players. I think JoJo Earle is a player we're not talking about enough, one that I think has a big impact. We talked about all the big players that can make plays downfield. You're going to see Jermaine Burton going deep. You're going to see Trayshawn Holden. You can see Ja'Cory Brooks. But I think JoJo Earle in the slot is going to be a nightmare. You looked at some of the highlights we've seen from him, at least in practices, some of the leaked clips that we've seen. I think that that's a player that really can be utilized more. Now, maybe that's Jahmyr Gibbs, but I think JoJo Earle definitely deserves a spot to be on the field and to get more touches than he did last year, to get more receptions. This is an Alabama team that is on a mission, and I don't think anybody's really going to slow them down. Georgia might be able to figure things out even with all the production that they lose. Texas A&M may be able to knock off Alabama again. I just don't see a lot of teams that are going to slow them down or even stop them. You look at the talent they have returning, at least at the top for sure, but even the depth too. That's just an insane team once again. And honestly, you just rinse and repeat. Alabama's going to be really good in 2022.